I thought it was interesting that I sort of got really devoted myself to thrillers with Don't Say a Word, which was about a psychiatrist, and ended with Man and Wife, which was about a psychiatrist. And I thought, you know, there's some kind of natural movement that went on here, and I'm done, you know. And I was ready and willing to just walk away and just kind of wait and see what happened. And what did happen was this kind of big picture occurred to me. It wasn't, usually these things had come to me as a story, a sort of what if, you know, a question. What if that girl was kidnapped? What if this was... but what happened was a kind of idea came to me, and I thought at first it was a television show, because I had never seen, you know, they have shows like L.A. Law that take in a law agency, and I'd never seen one like that about a detective agency, and I thought, well, that's an interesting concept. But as the characters, especially Weiss and Bishop, began to develop, I thought, this is too good for TV. You know, this could really be original. And finally, I had the idea for the narrator, who is a character I can honestly say I've never seen anywhere else, in the sense that he's an omniscient narrator. He writes the book as a novel so that he can go into the heads and the minds and emotions of the characters. But he's also a character in the book, a minor character, but a character whose thread is important and who continues on in the sequel. When I came on that, I thought, this is really different. And I could be excited about this for a number of times. And there are enough characters that I can take them in different directions and not just do, oh, yet again with this guy who has a certain number of quirky traits so that I have to
well, you've got Ed McBain as the model with the 87th
Ed
Precinct.
McBain, sure. There was 87th Precinct, and there was my favorites, the Martin Beck mysteries had that. But I thought that would keep me interested, and I was resolved at the time, and I am resolved now not to go on beyond that point. But I have to say, the minute I sat down to write Dynamite Road, I mean, I don't think I was 10 pages into it, I felt myself sort of coming back to life. I felt that I had, you know, crossed that, whatever that barrier was, and was completely refreshed and reinvigorated. And I think, if I may say so, I should say it who shouldn't, I think that the book shows that. And I think the reactions I'm getting from people, those old reactions of, you know, I read 10 pages and couldn't stop. I sat down and I was on page 125. I think those are sort of a testament to that fact, that suddenly I was back doing something that I was really excited about. And so far, I've written the first two, and I'm well into the third. It has just been an absolute discovery for me, and just as exciting as it can possibly be. You know.
There's a lot of energy in it, I think, and I think you're absolutely right. I think if you're not engaged, you're not going to ever engage the reader.
Right, right.
And also, which we'll get back to in a minute, the thriller, I think, at the moment is an overplayed form. And
That's
so if you're interested, well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you about my talk with the
Okay.
Wall Street Journal in a minute, but I mean, if you're a person who's easily bored, you
Right.
know, I think not only have you written a lot of thrillers, but everybody else is writing thrillers, and so maybe that has a lot to do with why you needed a new wellspring,
Well,
you know,
the
kind of
thing
get
about
going.
the thriller is, when I talk about movies in the sonnet form, the thrillers are a lot like that. Thrillers, in a thriller, the way I wrote thrillers, I mean, my brief in sitting down to write thrillers was to bring real characters and in-depth emotional situations to stories that move like a bullet, you know. I mean, there's nothing I hate more than people who say, oh, I use the genre for literary purposes. You know, I feel like, yeah, when you can do the genre, come back and talk to me again about your literary purposes. I tried to create really deep characters, but in stories that were just like those, you know, Japanese trains that just shot down the road. And the problem was that after a while, I had played the notes of that form. And I really was in a situation where, talk about taking the same walk twice, the only thing that I could do was create yet another character in yet another situation that was going to go off in certain beats. And I thought, that's just not me. It's just not what my life is like, and it's just not what my creative process is like. So I still believe in the thriller form. I still believe a new mind can bring new things to it, and I'm very proud of the things I did. I'm proud of True Crime and Don't Say a Word, and I'm especially proud of a book that not everybody liked called The Uncanny.
To talk about.
But as I say, the minute I started Dynamite Road, I knew I'd gone to a new place, and it just brought me back to life, and that's great.
Do you remember Joe Gore's series, The DKA Files?
Yeah, sure.
that to some degree is what you're, he had a car repo firm, but he
right.
also had, multiple characters in a private,
Right.
because he himself worked for one.
Yeah.
So it made him fun to read. But
Right.
I thought about that when I read Dynamite Road.
Yeah, and that's
because
very...
I love Joe's books. I thought,
Sure.
what is it, 49 or whatever, however,
Yeah.
69 Cadillacs, whatever it was.
Yeah.
It was just a wonderful book.
Well, it's just exciting too.
It is. Now, let's talk a little bit about the thriller form. You and I are batting it around because
Yeah.
we both know what it is. But
Right.
for our viewers, what is, I think of the mystery as circular in structure. To me, a detective story, a classic one, is circular. It has a closed environment within which you have a circle of suspects and some event that occurs, and then you've got in this non-porous, circle, only those people generally can have done the crime. And so you've got, if you think of a Christie Country House, sort of a classic deal. A thriller, to me, has always taken that circle and opened it up. So what you've got, and also a detective story tends to be static. It doesn't move all over the landscape because you've got this fairly fixed environment. I'm talking about the classic form.
You're kind of talking about the cozy more than the kind of stuff I do. But
the country house, the sort of basic early golden age detective story,
absolutely.
whatever. Then the thriller, to me, has always opened up that circle and presented us with this road. And what you have is a chase down the road. You've got an antagonist and a protagonist.
Right.
They, as you point out, rocket at whatever pace you can, and they move down the road, and the real question is not who done it, like in the mystery, but who's going to win.
Yep, and how, and
So it's almost like a duel. You can almost sort of see Errol Flynn, and Scary, or whatever it is, and these two guys are down the road.
I think the duel as good a chase is a very good metaphor for it. I think if I frequently use the ticking clock, which I just enjoy.
That's an additional, you and Jeffrey Deaver do that, are really good. I think of Rogue Mail is kind of my classic and favorite, early thriller. I just adored Rogue Mail.
Yeah.
I still, to this day, think it's just one of the great.
It's a wonderful book. You're absolutely right.
Lee Child's new book, Persuader, is a wonderful version of, the thriller. Of course, my husband would say Day of the Jackal.
Right.
Whatever. But anyway, you do, and a thriller has a lot of movement. It's bigger in scope. The stakes can be higher. It's much more filmable.
Well, see, now here's where the one part of this I disagree with.
Okay.
Now you
Good.
The way you describe the mystery is really the classic cozy or the country house.
It's not the PI novel. It's not the police procedure.
Right.
No, it's the sort of classic amateur sleuth. Here we all gathered while the reading of the will goes on.
Right.
And
exactly.
Somebody kills over.
Because one of the things that I have found so refreshing, and when I talk about just this kind of reinvigorating experience of Dynamite Road, the thing that I found wonderful was the kind of waywardness that the story gave me a chance to explore. Characters can go off on little side roads without slowing the story down and develop not only their character but the situation. In this, you have Bishop kind of exploring this very big action story, which really is a thriller story, at an airport in Northern California, while Weiss is really off on this very philosophical investigation about a killer who really can't possibly exist, And those two stories come together and they interweave. And in a thriller, you don't have time to do that. The thing is moving just too darn fast to allow one of your guys to sort of wander off and solve another mystery.
But it's also a single track, right?
And it's a single track. That's a better way of saying it, because it's not the speed, because I hope this book moves quickly too. It's not the speed, it's the direction. It's got one direction. And if you go off this way, it kind of takes away from that incredible forward pace, which is why you pick a thriller up in the first place. But, with Dynamite Road, it was just such a pleasure to just say, well, now, this fellow is going to work on this case, and yes, it will come back around, and the plot's not going to slow down, but it's not going to go like this, it's going to go like that, and it's going to look a little bit more chaotic, a little bit more like life, and that's what's so exciting about it to me.
You bet. Well, I think a police procedural is much more like that. It's much more fragmented.
Yes.
If you read a McBain, you can see, the bits of the investigation, goes here, goes there, and at the end somehow it all sort of gathers up.
Well, that description, one of my big arguments about this is that the detective story is really central to American literature. American criticism is one story after another of critics dismissing forms that turn out to be the center of what was happening at the time. Oh, it's just a Western, you know. Yeah, well, yeah, but it was The Searchers, you know. Oh, it's just a detective story. Yes, but it was The Maltese Falcon, you know. And who remembers what won the Pulitzer Prize the year The Maltese Falcon came out? Nobody, you know.